So welcome everybody. Today I have the great pleasure of Javier Coca with me. We're going to talk a little bit about engineering management. We're going to talk in depth about how to build a team, how to think about building teams from zero all the way to the initial steps and then expanding. Javier has a lot of experience in building teams. He's built teams for, I think it's about 6 years or more. He'll probably tell us a little bit more about that in a second. And it's going to be a great conversation. I'm very excited about this. I know we've had some conversations before, Javier and I, and there have been very fruitful conversations. So I'm very excited about this. And we'll just dive into that. So Javier, thank you for being here. And can you tell us a little bit about you so everyone can understand, about you and your background?
Sure. Thanks for the intro, Jesus. Happy to be here. Well, my background. I'm a software engineer, former software engineer. I'm no longer developing any code. I did that for a little over 10 years. My background is electronics engineering, but I did some grad studies that helped me hone my skills into software development. That actually helped me do the transition to a software development role. Software engineer per se, because my studies were a little bit on the lower level programming layer. After 10 years or so, one day I was completely tired of doing coding and was approached by a CEO and friend that needed some help with the operations, operating and managing an engineering team. At that time, I had already been leading a team, very small team, 3 or 4 people only, as a leader, and I really enjoyed the part of the mentoring and pulling people over and looking after them. I was really, really excited about that. So I immediately jumped into the opportunity, and from there I started managing teams. As mentioned before, almost every single team that I have managed has started as a small software engineering team. From there, most of the time they tend to grow either into multiple software engineering teams or different brands and flavors of other teams, usually support teams around engineering. People like technical writers or PMs, project managers, product owners, but they usually are, the ratio is usually like 8 to 1. For every 8 engineers, you have 1 or 2 project managers. So the vast majority of the time is still very embedded with the development of the products, but there is a lot of human factor that actually comes with managing different profiles. And thankfully, I have the opportunity to move into a bigger role that it's now the general manager, that it's actually overseeing all the different groups, not only the technical or the engineering related groups, also human resources, recruiting, something extremely different like marketing and customer service as well. So that has been a lot of, it's very enriching. It has been very challenging at times, but also has helped me develop a lot of different skills that I know I liked, but I know that I need to work on. So it has been very helpful in doing so.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So and it's amazing that you've been part of all the process, right? So, developing software products and moving from engineering into engineering management, and then to operations management, and then to general management. So it's pretty awesome that you have, these different perspectives and that on the long run, they pay out because you not only come from the top down approach, but you come from the bottom up approach as well. So that's pretty refreshing. And I think it's pretty insightful as well. And how big of a team do you currently manage?
Right now, it's a fairly small team. I think, well, it's not fairly small. I think it's a perfect ratio. I believe that the manager shouldn't have more than 12 people. 8 to 12 people, I think it's the best, the best amount of people where you can invest time on each one of them without any hesitations and really paying attention to their needs. So right now I have 4 direct reports that are individual contributors. They're just operations people. It's finance person, recruiting person, human resources, office management. And I'm currently managing the marketing team that has 3 different managers. Well, some of them are on development to become managers. That is graphic design, digital marketing, and mockups. That is kind of related to graphic design. And on the dotted line part, I help managing the software engineers managers. These are not my direct reports, but there's a lot of things that engineers do need. And given the position and the resourcefulness of my role, they tend to come to me actually even before going to their proper manager, that it's located in San Francisco. So a lot of things actually are resolved locally before actually bring them to their attention to their manager. Some of them are Mexican related labor laws that it will take us more just to explain what's going on and how we're going to do, other than executing and then just going back to San Francisco and explaining what actually happened and why we did what we had to do. So it's just a matter of strategy. The software engineers still report to a director of engineers, and all their metrics come from that specific branch. But there's a lot of things that actually intercalate and permeates to my arena.
That's really interesting to see how engineers still turn to to the site's general manager as well for guidance. And I think that is part as well of the importance of having a local as well general manager if you have an international operations, for example.
Definitely. And I think most of the time it's because the office usually starts with a couple of engineers. Those engineers, we try to develop them into bigger roles like leaders or managers. So the relationship and the trust and the confidence that they develop through the years or through the months still there, right? Even though they already have evolved into a manager position and I have no longer a direct working relationship with them, there's still a lot of trust. Me and them have built and have made decisions about important things that either didn't work or worked perfectly, that has brought us together, that makes it easier just to continue with that relationship, more in a mentoring kind of situation. They asking me for advice on how to approach things. And with my experience, I can tell them, like, you should go and talk to your manager, or you should go and talk to human resources, or just have a one-on-one, a sincere one-on-one with a person that's having this problem. So my approach is usually a little bit more on, let me advise you what you can do, because you're not a direct reportee. I can advise you. I can give you my point of view. At the end of the day, you are the manager and you have to make your own decisions. Sometimes we have to let them do their own mistakes, and so they can grow. But obviously, all the time, giving them the best advice possible so that they can make the better decision.
Awesome. Yes, and so kind of a mentor role, if you will, right? Okay. And is this the biggest team you've managed in your experience?
No, I have the opportunity to manage a much bigger team. As I told you before, I was the first person to open an office in GDL, and I had the opportunity to start recruiting almost every single person on that office. Only the recruiter was hired before myself, and between her and I, we started building the team. I was the only manager until we were somewhere around 45 people. Extremely complicated because there's not enough hours in the day that you can have to have proper one-on-ones with everybody. Some people require a lot of guidance. We were focusing a little bit more on senior profiles, but even the most seasoned engineer, from time to time, they require to have some um, guidance or at least someone to listen to them and bounce ideas. So everybody requires to have their own time with the manager so they can speak about problems, bring to my attention some impediments, blockers, whatever they require from me to actually to be able to properly execute whatever they have to. So it was a combination of mainly software engineers. I would say at least half of them were software engineers, but the other half were technical writers, project managers. The recruiting team was also growing. Operations, we had an accountant and office manager as well, plus some here and there contractors that help us with different things like facilities and stuff like that.
Nice. And for clarification purposes, GDL is Guadalajara. Guadalajara, Mexico. Yeah. So it's and I mean Guadalajara is growing a lot, so it makes sense that big teams are making headway down there. So that's it's pretty amazing. 40 people can get out of hand real quick. I mean, I was doing the math. If you got 40 one-on-ones and you do one, you have to do like more than two or three every single day. So I mean, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time commitment to really invest in really giving them the actual feedback that's needed, like you were properly saying, and given that teams not teams, but particular people require different dynamics, right? Which is what you were saying. So it's very interesting. And I definitely agree with that. The difficulty of expanding teams is that, the time that the manager can really invest in making sure that their team is not blocked, is autonomous and can move forward. So definitely agree on that. And I'm going to jump into more of a causational. I don't think I said that right, but well, it's a question and sort of like where it's coming from. What made you get into engineering? Going back into those early days where you started in engineering and then moved into this general manager position.
Sure, my family is it's a long life family of engineers. My father, uncles, cousins, everybody went into engineering. I don't know the particular reason why they did. I know that I grew with that on mind, and it was very simple for me. The only decision I had to make was what kind of engineering I would like to pursue. I've always been the type of person that gets in trouble because they take apart things. One time I remember my father came with a brand new television, one of those that were not as big as they used to be. And I just took out my Swiss knife and started taking it apart. Obviously, when I put it back together, it didn't work. I got into big trouble because of that. But that's usually the type of person that I've always been. Just eager to know how things actually work beneath the curtains. So electronics engineering made a lot of sense. There I had a lot of hands-on experience on how to do things and how to build stuff, and a lot of knowledge on lower level programming, like assembly language and machine language. That it's very, very archaic, but it forces you to, with a very limited set of instructions, to be able to program something. So the evolution to computer science, computer engineering was very simple. I already know and I already liked to program things, to make things actually happen. The hello world, everybody's excited the first time we do it in any specific language. That's very exciting for me. So the decision to move into engineering was a family tradition, but going into computer science or computer engineering was more of my liking to know how things actually work, and not just staying and some people like to go and play with things. I like to dive in and really understand what's going on, really taking apart things and then putting back together. I found that with software is so much easier than with hardware. Hardware is almost impossible to put it back together. Now software, I do have my fair share of bugs that I have created just by exploring different codes or libraries that were not developed by me or by my group. But that's a different story.
That's pretty cool. And I think, from what I've learned in talking a lot to engineers is, even though you start in one place, you can move to others, because it's not I don't think it's a theory that makes the engineer, but rather the way of thinking. You develop that, that problem solving, structured way of tackling problems that can be applied in any of those, engineering applications. And I think that's one of the things that, in my personal opinion, a lot of careers out there should include, more of that structural approach. But that's me diving into education, which I don't think I should go. I should go down there.
A former manager told me a good engineer is someone that is excited by brain teasers. Anything that actually pokes your mind and say like, damn, I don't know how to do this, but I know my way around it, so I'm going to figure it out. Okay. He told me that's a good engineer. That person is going to find either a book or a tool or a person that's going to help him resolve what he needs to be resolving, and that's just engineering. That's the way of approaching.
I agree. And from jumping a little bit into another topic, you've worked with, you mentioned San Francisco, California. You've mentioned a little bit of international teams. So have you been working remotely, and for how long have you been working remotely?
So I usually say that I work remotely, although I don't think it is per se a remote working. So all the leaders that I have worked with, all the companies that I help open, they're usually stationed, and upper management is usually located in the Bay Area, San Francisco or somewhere around there. So my commitments have always been the same. I go with them, I understand what they want to do, and I come back to either Guadalajara, Mexico City, or even Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh, I open an office in there. So my work, I do work to open an office, but my OKRs and all of the objectives are given by a remote office, by a person that is not sitting next to me. It's usually geographically distributed. Most of the time, and this has happened, a lot of the San Francisco-based startups or companies have someone in Delaware, because they usually incorporate in Delaware. Yeah. So either the financial team or HR or someone in there, they have in Delaware. Some other part of the team is in San Francisco. So it's two different time zones as well, plus our own time zone. So I'm very used to work remotely. Most of the time, I understand the hurdles of having to be in a different time zone, waking up at certain time, being accessible in some other period of time, and then being able to respond in another time. So I've been doing this for the past 6 years, although I do get to go to an office. So once most of the objectives are completed, usually involved to have an office, to have people going to the office, and being able to convince them that the best environment will be in the office, although remote working is implicit at the time that you give someone a laptop instead of a desktop. Yeah,
and it sounds like you've done sort of like the hybrid, right? So you have certain remote communications with sort of like the HQ in the US, but you also have in person, and of course that's part of what your job entails, right? Building that actual office. And so definitely I can see that, that hybrid approach to both things. Now, do developers in your team or the teams that you have managed in the past work remotely, or do you have also the hybrid approach where they get to work a couple of days in the office, a couple of days at home, or is it 100% in the office, or is it varied? It's a combination of everything that you just mentioned. So most of the time it's a hybrid approach. A lot of very talented software engineers, they do like to work from home at least a couple of days a week. So that will be most of the people I have managed. But I have managed people on the other side of the world.
When I opened the Vietnam office, I was still managing the team that was in GDL. And when I left Vietnam, I was still managing the team that I left in Vietnam. So there's still a lot of those are teams that are 100% remote, because I was not even in the same time zone. I was actually 12 hours ahead of whatever they were doing. So it was complicated for us to have a sync. It was 6-7 p.m. for them. It was 6-7 a.m. for me. And at that moment, we have to be able to resolve things, because otherwise it will take another 24 hours just to get the same people in the phone, in the conversation. That's a waste of time. So we usually try to do it 12 hours, so at least only one day goes around without having proper communication. And the third approach is someone that I have never met. So we have done that. I have worked with people that we have right now, a couple of guys in Tijuana, Mexico, that they have, because of COVID, they have not even able to fly over to have a in-person onboarding, 2-week onboarding, or even to have on-site. I usually try to have on-sites as part of the recruiting process. Everything is online until the on-site, that is usually in person. For the last, I would say, out of the last 10 people, at least 6 we have not met actually in person. It has been 100% remote. We have been able to engage very, very nicely. I think there is a lot of factors that come and go in here, but yes, I have been able to hire someone and to work with someone 100% remotely without even meeting them, not even once in person.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and Codesync has been from the get-go, we've been 100% remote. So I know that feeling of hiring someone, and then the curious thing about it is you formulate so many different ideas in your mind whenever you're meeting with someone over Zoom, over like Google Hangouts or whatnot, and like you start guessing their height and you start guessing their presence. But it's very funny. We have a yearly retreat, and whenever one of the guys in my team showed up, I'm like, oh wow, you're really tall. I was not expecting that. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's funny because you get to meet them over online mediums, and you work well, but you also start wondering those human factors as well. So it's fun. It works. But yeah, it's sort of, I think it's sort of like that secondary effect. and go ahead.
No, completely. I was just going to compliment what you were saying, that even if you don't want, you start creating your own idea of things, right? Like, especially when you're managing a team and they're engineers, some of my concerns are, do you have a proper monitor, a chair, keyboard? Things that actually are very, very minor, but usually help a lot. It's like having, most of them are usually asked to have dual monitors, dual screens, because they're more effective at doing so. I'm more of a laptop person, but everybody's different. So every time that I speak with someone that's remote, like, is your chair comfortable enough? Is your keyboard a little bit ergonomic, because if you buy the Apple one that is flat and small and cramped, people are not going to be as productive. So, or
you get carpal tunnel.
Or would you rather just have a standing desk? Let's see if we can mail you one of those lifters, desk lifters or something, so you can actually stand and sit. So you start, as you were saying, you start imagining things, how the workspace of each person actually looks like, and how can you improve it. But then you start messing into something that you shouldn't be, like it's personal space as well, right? It is he's working from home, but it's work is one thing, home is another thing. So the dynamics also in there, me trying to be too accommodating. Sometimes I'm feeling that I'm reaching out too much.
Yeah, and I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that remote work, topic. It's been, I think, what I would say more than more than 5, maybe even 10 years that remote work has started to incorporate itself into everyday life.
Mhm.
And in my eyes, it all started with tech, because tech is a natural evolution of that, because you're in the computers, you're online, it's easier, you work in code, you can push that code to the cloud. And then a lot of tools have started to be released that can help and even, you know, approach that and give you that autonomy, right? So in your eyes and in your opinion, why do you think we've evolved into this version of remote work, or even remote work in that respect?
I think there's a lot of factors involving here. The first one was, as you were saying, technology. Technology per se has evolved to a point that we can actually communicate very effectively, sometimes even more effective than in person. When you use some asynchronous communication, you don't have to wait for the person to actually answer to you. You know that the message is there, that that person is actually going to respond to you whenever they have some time, and you can move on and start working on something different. So technology definitely has been one of the bigger enablers. Um, Remote work, also I think economics. Most of the things that happen in the world are because of economics. There's a lot of savings involved in remote working. Uh, Savings in time, just because you don't have to commute from one place to the other, or you don't have to relocate to a different city or even to a different country, and all the hurdles that actually you have to go through to do so. Visas, or if you're a family person like myself, relocating children and wife and house, and just giving up your current life and embracing a new one. Could be a better one, could be the same one, but it's just embracing change, right? Um, Also, I think in the latter part of the years that you were talking about, I think two things actually got better. Back in the day, career paths were very stiff. They were not flexible enough. People had to either become a manager to aspire to earn enough money to have whatever people usually invest their money on. Right now, there's a very there's a lot of opportunities to develop your career into any arena you want to develop it into. Um, just for engineers, you can go into the distinguished engineer, the architect parts, the manager parts. There's a lot of different DevOps part. There's a lot of different career paths that you can choose that are going to be well developed. You're going to learn, you're going to grow, and you're also going to earn more money. Uh, as I was telling you, back in the day, there were only one or two options. So you either have to give up doing code, doing what you like, and get into politics, because people managements usually require you to be a little bit more political, or you can stay being just another engineer with very limited uh, opportunities ahead of you. I also think that talents right now, remote work has enabled a lot of people that doesn't follow the traditional way of learning. There's a huge amount of talent that has developed a talent just because they love what they're doing, and they have had a computer in front of them since they were kids, and they have put it together and grow it and taken it apart. So they have developed this um, working knowledge of programming that didn't require uh, for them to move to another state, go to college, earn a degree. That's the traditional way. I also have found incredible engineers going that route, but I also have found incredible software developers that doesn't have a degree. They are high school dropouts because they were already doing a lot of things just by working on their computers, and they have evolved into being extremely well developers. So that access to talent has also helped us or enable us to do remote work. Because right now you don't need to go to a university to invite people over to your company. You can find them wherever you want, wherever they are, and they don't have to actually go into your ecosystem to be effective and be able to work with you.
Definitely, I agree. I agree. And there's this financial term. I don't know if it's correct in using it, but it's sort of like commoditizing
Mm.
the talent pool. So it just expands the reach that a company can have for specialized talent with over 250 or more programming languages, and specifically 10 different frameworks for each language, finding that exact talent that you need to build that exact
Mm.
software that you're trying to build with that exact package. It's more and more, it's harder every time. So I guess it's also, I think it's part of that need that the whole ecosystem is asking us to do. And I think we were talking about the other day that businesses are wise, and they tell you when it's time to move and when it's time to
Mm.
grow, when it's time to contract. And I think the environment, the tech ecosystem, and the industry is wise as well. It starts
Mm.
telling us when it's time to look outward, when it's time to to focus on specific things. So I think I really like your answer, because it just touches a lot on the different issues that I believe as well. And my expectation about remote work is that it'll, with the COVID-19 crisis, and everyone's just sort of like jumping remote from one second to the next. I think more companies and more of the archaic companies are saying, okay, hey, it
Mm.
works. It's not only a tech thing. It's not only something that was
Mm.
dreamed or something that was asked by lazy employees, whatever they put it.
Mm.
But so I think it's only good. It's only going to get better, if you will.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts of that? What are your expectations? Where do you see remote work going?
Definitely, as you were saying, remote work is going to grow. It's here to stay. Some of the companies that were reluctant into embracing it were forced to actually taste it and to have. There was no other way of them continue working. And I was just I was reading a little post in LinkedIn that said they asked the director of engineering who was the power sponsor for tech innovation. It was your CTO, was it the CEO, or was COVID? Because yeah, most of the companies were forced to actually start technological innovation because of COVID. And tech companies that were already doing or were allowing remote working or were looking for remote working, now it's going to be a established process and policy. They're gonna ask you, like, where do you want to work? There is a space in the office, but you're 100% um, able to work remotely, and here's your kit. I think that's the only difference. Right now, we need to develop. Every company is gonna develop an onboarding process on how to bring people on board, either in person or remote. I see that tech companies, at least 20-25% of their workforce is going to work remotely. Most of the product development companies that are 100% just software, at least 50% are going to continue working remotely. Right now, I don't see, there is no compelling reason for anyone to bring people to the office, especially if the talent is not accessible. The example is in the Bay Area, there's a huge amount of engineers, a lot of talent in there, but they're extremely expensive. So even when you have access to to that type of talent, you are not able to bring them on board. So it doesn't really matter if they're sitting next to you, they're as far as anyone in the other side of the world. Usually it's more convenient if you're in the same time zone, or two plus hours ahead or before, but it's just easier. But yeah, definitely it does help. I see that in the near future, industries that were not uh, as eager to have people working remotely are going to start working remotely. A lot of in-person paperwork is also evolving thanks to DocuSign and companies of that sort. You no longer actually need to go to see a lawyer in person, right? Or a doctor in person. You can do and sign papers and have a health check appointment virtually. And that's definitely gonna, it's happening already, and it's here to stay. I don't see doctors that are currently using electronic means to communicate with their patients going back to the traditional way. If it's effective, right? Sometimes you do need to see the person. I had a friend that was telling us about remote operation, that you actually just control the robot that is actually doing the surgery on the person. I think that's even evolving a little bit beyond just a webcam, right? But it is the future, and this is where all the ecosystem is moving. Some industries are going to take longer. Manufacturing, it's a little bit complicated for someone to manufacture something remotely, but it can be enabled through robots or computers, but it's going to take longer. But for us, tech companies, the ones that are already doing remote work, most of the employees are going to stay geographically dispersed. The ones that were a little bit reluctant, now they're going to be fully embraced, and they're going to allow at least 25% of their workforce to work from a different location.
Exciting times ahead of us. I think I agree with everything you said, and you know, just adding to that, we've heard voices from, you know, big tech companies, Facebook, you got Coinbase, you got Shopify, you got Appalation, saying that either they're going to go full remote or they're going to look to go full remote. So I think it's exciting times for everyone. Companies looking to continue growing, you know, talent looking for the new opportunity, you know, talent that hasn't been, you know, in the past able to be in those opportunities. So I think it's exciting times. But I want to switch gears, you know, moving from remote. I want to dive deep into your thoughts about management. In my eyes, management is a very misunderstood position from the outside. I think once you're in, you understand it very well. But from the outside in, it's very misunderstood. And while there's a lot of books about management, I think everyone sort of like just gets, you know, crafts their way and starts, you know, putting their way together as they go, as they start learning. So in your eyes, and let's start with the basics. In your eyes, what's the role of a manager?
For me, a manager needs to be an enabler. That's the word that actually summarizes what I think a manager should be. A manager is a person, is a power sponsor inside of the company of that specific team. Is the one that knows the strengths and weaknesses of the team. Is the person that actually can help remove blockers, resolve impediments, and isolate people from any distraction. There are distractions of very simple sorts, like, you know, my paycheck hasn't arrived, and that's a big distraction for any employee, especially engineers, because they usually tend to live on a day-by-day basis, and or distractions where there's a personal problem and they really don't know how to approach that. It could be a health issue. It could be just a personal thing about I'm moving in with my girlfriend, and that's stressful. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, blah, blah. This is where the manager needs to be mature enough to say, you know what, this is something distracting. Take time. You have PTOs. Take a couple of days to resolve any issue, and whenever your mind is completely clear, you can come back and continue being effective. You don't require. That's why I say it's an enabler. We have to enable them to take the better decisions for them that actually is going to result on better decisions for the company. We don't want to have someone sitting down just biting their nails and thinking about what's going to happen. It's better for them to have some time, go resolve whatever they need to resolve, and then come back. They're going to come back more focused and more thankful because they were able to resolve something that they thought it was completely not impossible, but that was lingering in their minds, and that they were getting distracted. So yeah, in a single word, that's the role of the manager. There are certain different roles that are human resources related or operational related, but mainly the gist of the role is to enable people to do their work without all of the external factors affecting their work.
That's really good approach and seeing things, and I'd complement that with seeing and understanding that different talents and understanding ways to enable them as well, right? Based on the talent, they need different things. So it's sort of like also understanding, having that people skill and that human approach and warm approach of saying, okay, I understand who they are, I understand their strengths, understand their fears, and understand how to approach them, how to ensure that they can perform. So I think it's a very unique dance with every single person that is reporting to you. Do you have any approach to management? Do you have a set of principles that you follow?
Most of the time, it's the same as we were just talking about. I like to be a manager that is walking the walk with them. Like it's actually doing things next to each other so that they see that this is not a reportee manager relationship. This is a team. This is a team, and some people in the team have some expertise, and some other person in the team has different skills. We as a team are the ones that are gonna get things done. My role, or the role of the manager, will be, as I was telling, to enable them to do or to achieve what they need to achieve. If it's achieving better skills through education or through mentoring or through peer programming, through any techniques, the manager has to enable it. If it's just finding the correct time for delivering a product, a story, a feature, it's also part of management to recognize what complexity actually that has, and being able to negotiate on behalf of the team on when something's going to get done in the better way, right? Everybody can finish up something simple, but not everybody can finish it up correctly. And I usually try to do it in the correct way. So yes, it's, for me, the approach is being a leader, follow the principles that the team usually is the one that's doing the work, is the one that that's putting the effort. Not that the manager doesn't do any effort, but sometimes you do have to roll your sleeves and get into code and get things done. But most of the times, the approach is to enable them to see that they have everything that needs to be done so that they can do things better in a better way. Most of the time, I can tell you, sometimes I've stayed very late with a team, and the only thing that I'm doing is bringing them pizza and beer and coffee, and just enabling them to finish what they need to do. Obviously, there's going to happen something like, oh, we need more processing power in our AWS processor. So yeah, go, here's my card, just buy another core, or put some more memory, or expand whatever, replicate the database. Those decisions are very simple to make. Most of the time, those are manager-related decisions. But yeah, at the end of the day, still just enabling the team to be able to do their work.
I can appreciate that, definitely. It's part of ensuring that stuff gets done as well, which is hard as well, because in remote work and remote teams, there's, well, I guess in teams, not specifically remote, but there's that that need to completely move and saying, okay, let's get after that. Let's get after that objective, right? And do you think there's a difference between managing remote team versus managing in-person teams?
I think what I have found to be the most complicated part is to see, when you are in person, you do see how much someone struggles or how much someone works to get into something. If you're doing it remotely, sometimes you only see the 30 minutes that you have, or the 15 minutes in the Scrum meeting that you have to see what people are complaining about. But once you're no longer in front of the camera, that's the engineer and his own problems. So unless this person is extremely open in communication, that engineers per se, they're not very open with communication. It's you struggle on seeing when they are suffering about something. So there has to be, you have to build a very good relationship with all of them so that they can actually open up whenever you ask them, is everything all right? Because then they will pour everything into you and say like, no, this is wrong. I'm falling behind here, blah, 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 until you ask them. Most of the time they will not bring forward because and this is something that I thought it was only for Mexicans, but I've seen it across the world. People are very proud of themselves. They don't like to show something that could be perceived as weakness. So they'll rather exhaust everything else, Google it, search it, ask about it before actually bringing it as a weakness. And that's something that if it's in person, you can see it, right? You can see that this person is sweating or with his hands on the head and just pounding on the keyboard. If that's actually happening remote, you don't see it unless they share it with you. So that's one of the things that I have found much more challenging to actually to realize that that's happening. And the ripple effect of not being able to recognize that, the person can really get burned down, can really get frustrated. His energy level can drop. So so as a manager, you will see those signs afterwards, after the fact, right? Like when someone is not completing, when someone consistently completes stories and suddenly starts dropping 1 or 2 stories, 1 time it's okay, 2 times something's wrong, 3 times definitely something's happening. But until the signs are there, you realize that. In person, most of the times you can see that someone is struggling. The other parts also, I think permeating the culture is a little bit more difficult. Most of the time with in-person people, this is something I do myself. Every time that I leave the office, I go and ask everybody, is everything okay with you? Do you need something from me? Every single person. Sometimes, obviously, there's chit chat in between, but the message is the same. Do you need something from me? And that actually permeates down. So whenever someone leaves the company, leaves the office for the day, they go around to their teams and ask, I'm leaving, do you need something from me? And usually there's, oh yeah, before you leave, just, can you help me out with this function that you wrote? I don't really understand what the wrapper around it is doing, or something like that. Or if it's a QA engineer, oh yeah, I was clicking in here and the story says that it has to do this, but I agree with you. It looks better in this way. So do you mind if I change? There's always something that they can do just by someone approaching, is there anything that you need to? We have tried to do that in our Slack channels. That I see is not as effective as in person. You do ask, I'm leaving, is there anything else? No, thank you, good night. I really enjoy, blah, blah, blah. But nobody really brings to your attention something that I have seen in person do bring into your attention. And sometimes it's very simple things. But just because you're asking, they're just going to tell you like, yeah, of course, come and help me with this addition. Something very simple.
I like that. I like that, hey, I'm leaving. Do you have any questions? Do you have any, any doubts? I think that works a lot in helping folks also remember things. And now that you mentioned the remote, doing it through Slack, I can definitely see that happen, because it's like you're doing your thing and someone just pops up a message and then you're like, oh, okay, well, there, have a good day. But whenever you turn into that, you're like, oh, I forgot that I had to ask them. I should have asked him, and then you ask them, and then the Slack, and then they don't respond, and it just starts snowballing back. And I think Slack's a great tool, but yeah, there is something about that human interaction that you still can't replicate, even though it's really close, but still not quite there.
And as long as a team, if the team was created with remote working in mind, it's easier, because then there's a lot of little processes and protocols that are already in place that will, the first time someone comes to a team and the manager says, okay, I'm leaving, do you guys need anything? And then everybody start pouring things in. into the Slack, like, yeah, you forgot to tell me this. I'm still waiting on that. I'm going to shoot you an email about that. That new person is going to say like, okay, so it's these are the mechanics, right? So I'm allowed to tell the manager, even if it's 5 to whatever hour, something that I need, and this guy is going to deliver. So it's not that it cannot be done. It just has to be embedded since the beginning of the process, so that everybody realizes that that's the way that the team works or the company works.
Yeah, building that habit. I hear you. I agree with that as well. And one thing that's important on that on with engineering teams and managing them, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into engineering teams in just a second, but I just want to get this one last question in. How do you manage performance? Do you have, and I think performance is very big, and I don't want to keep harking on the remote work, but managing performance on site versus remote is a completely different animal. And for me, it's always very interesting to hear from other managers, the ways that they're doing that. Because again, going back to what I mentioned about managers, there's just not one set way of doing it. There's just a bunch of ways you can do, and there's there's the scorecard, and there's just a bunch of frameworks. But what's your take? How do you manage performance with the teams?
I've been very successful at just following regular agile. Somebody told me once, a Scrum Master told me, like, nobody does agile the way it should be done. Like, there's like 17 guidelines, and most of the people only do 1 or 2. I can tell you, I do only 3 or 4. I'm still waiting for 12 to actually bring some value to the table. But what I do find is that having proper stories and allocating time based on engineers' bandwidth, it's very effective. I'm very happy that we have also been able to incorporate different teams that have never worked on an agile environment, like graphic designers or marketing, to an agile-like methodology. They also put together, leaders and managers put together the backlog of the stories that need to be accomplished. And it's basically almost every single company does that. It's the quarterly goals, it's the yearly goals, that they just have to be tripled down to a month. And if the cadence of your Scrum is every 2 weeks, so it's only into half a month, and there you have the stories that you want to accomplish. So it's very simple. It's not very simple, but it's something that it's proven, and the mechanics are very easy to digest. The day-to-day and actually getting into the story, that's a little bit more complicated, especially if there are a lot of stakeholders around. The amount of work that is needed to put into the planning is as great as the sprint itself. So it has to be done properly. For example, I also been able to incorporate roles that are a little bit more difficult to predict their work. Operations, for example. Most of the time, office managers, office coordinators, they are reactive people. They go and solve problems that they were not foreseeing a week or 2 weeks ago. So what we have done is, okay, we have a bigger scope of what we want to accomplish, and then we just have weekly to-dos. So, okay, this week, because last week this and that happened, our higher priority, let's just bump it into this. That it's very similar to Jira, to Agile right now, that I'm thinking, because there's always going to be stories that are going to be last minute incorporated, and that's going to have bigger priority, and that's going to do that different stories go back to the backlog. Same thing, but maybe not with all the Agile Scrum Master words. Instead of saying that this is a story, this is just something I have to do, and this is the time frame, and this is the completion criteria, and this is how you tell that it's done or not done. So basically just putting clear objectives in front of people. Some of them need to have them written down. And some of us that doesn't really need to have them written down, it doesn't really bother us to have a clear understanding of what that sentence says. So everybody beneficiates from having a proper a backlog of stories or tasks or things to do, and prioritization among the team, upper management, leaders, the team itself, and knowing what you have to do and execute in order to get there. And also taking into account things like I have classes, I have meetings, I have interviews, I have 2 days of vacations, etc. So those are also taken into account. That per se, that's agile, right? That's one of the things that you take into account when you start planning for the next sprint. That it's a couple of weeks or a month. It's the same thing for any other team. The only difference is that you don't tell that it's agile per se.
Yeah, you don't call it that way, but it's still that way.
It's still that
way. And yeah, I can attest to using agile in other departments besides the technology department. I learned about that in my brief stint as a sort of like a little bit of a tech manager, but then I saw the usefulness of applying it everywhere else. It just keeps you accountable, keeps you in check, keeps you moving, and assuring that you're not waiting, you're iterating. So I value that a lot. And I think that to be able to do it properly, you have to add, as well, going back to the remote work, doing it properly in a remote setting, clear communication is very important. And having that clarity on the objective, that clarity on what's expected, what the process is, what a success looks like, when is that success expected to happen. So I see that as very, very important part of employing it, using it correctly, and then actually reaping the benefits. I wanna then now move into the beefy part of the conversation, which is the building and engineering team best practices. From what you told us and from what we've talked about today as well, you've had all this experience in building small teams, building big teams, building medium teams. So for me, it's always curious, and this is something I think very personal. Like, how do you start? That's my one thing. There's a lot of folks that tell you, okay, yeah, this is how you do things whenever you have a team. And you're like, okay, cool, but how do I get to that place?
Yeah.
And I think you have the actual insights on that. So I'm really excited about really getting to learn about that. But so let's start small. How do you start building a team from zero, from the ground? You just got to Guadalajara, you've got no one besides you. What's the first thing you do?
Well, the first thing you have to do, in my point of view, is really understand the technology. Really understand, dive into what you are, what the product itself is about. If you're the CEO or the founder, you obviously have the working knowledge of what you're trying to bring people to help you with. If it's just an idea of somebody else, then you have to embed yourself and really learn what they were trying to solve with that specific product and what technology is helping them get there. Once you or your colleague or your CTO or whoever has that knowledge, then I would recommend start reaching out to small groups of tech leads. Everybody knows someone that is a good engineer somewhere, and good engineers always love to hang out with good engineers. So you can invite them over to a coffee, to a little presentation. I have done, I would say, dozens of pizza, beer, tequila, tacos night that it's very informal, just sitting down, drinking something, eating something that it's with the hands, so you don't actually have to sit down and use forks, something dynamic. And then some CTO or yourself, the one that has the knowledge, start, hey, what do you think about a product that does this, this, and that? It's a sales pitch. It's an extended elevator pitch. What do you think about a product that does this, this, and that with this, and that technology? These leaders are going to poke holes in whatever you say, because they are the tech leaders that you want to approach to bring to their attention something that could be something very interesting. They're going to say like, no, this is not going to work because A, B, or C, and no, this has been done already by this other company or this other startup, or yes, I had that idea, but didn't actually mature because A, B, or C. you're going to have a lot of insights, but they also, you're going to plant in their mind something that's going to grow. That is, maybe this is a big project. Maybe this is a good project. In parallel, I would recommend to continue working or start working with a bigger community. Could be a co-working space, could be a group, enthusiasts, whatever, so that you can put together an event, a massive event. When I say massive, it's engineering massive. It's never going to be like thousands of people. It's going to be somewhere around 50 to 60 engineers. Just a quick presentation of some of the things that you learn from the tech leaders. When we were, the first time when we were starting with Scalable Press, there were not a lot of people using JavaScript with React and Node.js at the same time. We were doing the transition between one and the other. So a lot of these tech leaders were telling us, like, how are you doing that transition? Like, why did you start with that one instead of the other one? Well, because that's how we started, right? Like, so sometimes you don't realize that you need something that's more scalable. Things like that. So then we thought about topics. The things that these guys were scratching their heads off, that was a topic of some of our conversations with different communities. And that's when we invited people. Like, there's a JavaScript JS GDL, that's JavaScript for GDL team that they have like 100 and something people following each month's event. So we tap into those guys, invite them over. And the topic was very interesting because it was Node versus React. Things like that, like really will catch an engineer's attention. And lastly, the team that is going to help you build, the people that are going to help you build the team have to be embedded in these 2 or 3 previous steps. If it's a recruiter, the recruiter needs to go and learn and listen to the tech leads to see what type of talent they are, how they manage themselves, what will be the interesting thing to approach them. Every engineer gets tons of recruiters' emails inviting them to take into account this new project, this new company, this other opportunity. There has to be a compelling reason for them to actually open your email. The second one, other important people inside of the what I call the support team to recruit engineers should be the CEO or CTO, someone with a C-level position, because it's not the same thing as senior recruiter, IT recruiter from whatever, than the CEO of something. That just because it's the CEO, you know that you're going to be talking with the person that really knows how things are done. And having all those 3 things in place will enable you to start the conversation with the first few engineers that are going to be your foundation. Based on that, then you have to be more strategic on who is going to be your first. I would say the most important group of engineers are the first 4 engineers, because those are the ones that people are going to say, like, oh, if this guy is there, it must be good. Or if this guy is there, like, they're most probably paying them a lot of money, but they're not doing anything. So it has to be very strategic people. But that depends on the company. If it's a support role, well, maybe you need some people dynamic that know what they're going to be here only 1 year and then they're going to move to another position because they're going to finish this up, learn it very fastly, and then move. If it's a product company that's just starting, then it's different, because then you need this seasoned engineer, very well respected, that has done something in the past and has a network that can help you bring along more engineers. So it depends on the company, but yeah, the first 3 steps that I told you, I have found that they're effective in doing so. And then, as you were saying, I know there's different ways of doing. I've tried different ways. I would say this is the ones that have consistently deliver good results.
That's awesome. And I think, like, touching a little bit on your point that you were saying, those first few hires, I agree that they are key. And And sometimes, folks that are starting growing teams, maybe they already have an internal team, but they want to grow an external team. They sometimes they just sort of want to go for just everyone at the same time. Just hire 10, hire 20. No, wait. I mean, I believe that it's sort of like an iterative approach where you get in first, those first four leaders that are going to help you, because then they become your ambassadors, and then they help you, deal with some issues, and then they can become managers themselves. So, understanding that first layer, and also mixing and matching, which is something that I would also recommend, and not bring in all of, for backend
of course, yeah,
engineers. No. Like just distributing them is a
no,
great approach as well.
Even if you're looking to create a backend engineering team, there has to be a lot of balance, right? Like there's always someone that's going to be very good at data accessing. There's always going to be someone very good at table crunching. So they have to complement each other. So yes, that's why the first four are even more important, because they have to complement each other. They have to be able to, also they have to be very flexible, and because they are the first ones, right? And that could mean that within weeks they can pivot to something else because the company is just pivoting to something else. So they have to be, I would say, more like a full stack rather than just front or back end. And they have to have that knowledge of computers themselves instead of just a programming language. Because nobody can build anything just by knowing one single thing. They have to have working knowledge of several other things. And if they complement each other, like someone is very good at PHP, but also good at something else, another one very good at Python, data crunching stuff, CSS and front-end stuff. So there's having that combination of different strengths will usually help you tackle most of the projects. Hopefully, once you started this, there's a clear understanding of what the goal is. That's gonna make it a little bit easier to hire the first engineers more accurately. But yeah, the first few have to be, I would say, more like a computer scientist than actually a software developer engaged with some specific layer of programming.
I agree. And from a company's perspective, is there something, or are there some things that are important to define from the get-go, from an internal standpoint?
When you're starting an engineering team, I think the first thing you have to know, and it has to be extremely clear as it can be, is the goal. So, I mean, what's the product? What module, library, feature? What is it that this team's gonna build? What is it that this team's gonna help the company create? Once you have that, then you can start establishing different things. Like, okay, if you want to do this specific product, you need this type of talent. And this type of talent usually needs to have this type of expertise. And given their expertise and their talent, this is the salary ratio of these people we're gonna be bringing along. And this type of ratio and this type of salary range usually requires them also to have a career path. So we have to understand what we can offer them afterwards, because these are the things that people are going to be asking the first day. So all of this information that I'm telling you, that it's a little bit more on the engineering structure, comes with a single question of what is the product that we're building? What is the module, library? If it's a complete new feature, if it's just a support library, if it's automating tests, okay, what's the testing that we're automating? What's the framework we're going to be using for automating? Is it going to be mobile, or is it going to be web-based, or it's just going to be a desktop application? It has to be the goal, what we're trying to do. It has to be extremely clear, because that's going to define what the team's going to look like, or at least in your understanding what the team should look like, and you're going to be a little bit more accurate on what you're searching for. And with those things in mind, you can start putting structure into it. As I was telling you, the career path, salary range, the engagement, the engagement that you need to do. How do you engage? It's very different if you engage a support, how you engage a support engineer than a data engineer or a DevOps engineer. Completely different. They are all engineers, they all do programming and stuff, but how do you attract that talent? How do you make the company sexier to one or the other? It depends on the goal. It depends on the task that you want to achieve. And that has to be properly defined, otherwise you will be just shooting blanks everywhere.
And I think companies sometimes forget that part. They're so blindsided about, I want to get it. They see it, but they don't communicate it. They're like, I need to get this team because they're going to do this. But then they say to their internal team, hey, go get me these guys. And they're like, okay, but you know, let me in on all the details so I can properly figure that out. And from our particular experience, and I would say, you know, 50 to 60% of the work is done before you ever start hiring someone. If you put those, you know, first stones in and those first bricks, that foundation, you can properly start building a team, because it'll then, if you don't do that, then you have to roll back and say, okay, then we mishired. We shouldn't have hired them. So now you lost money, you lost time, and you have to go back and you have to start learning. So
and you also tainted your reputation, right? Because now, if these were good engineers, they're gonna talk to their peers and say like don't even go close to this company because they don't even know what they are doing. And you also miss the opportunity to have the better impact. The first impact is always going to be the better impact, even if down the road you realize that you screwed up, blah blah. But the first few months, the way that you handle the company and the projects, the brain teasers that the engineers are tackling, if they are really excited about that, you don't even have to do marketing. They're just gonna go and talk to their friends and family, and they're gonna say like, this is the best company because I'm doing A, B, and C. Down the road, you can say like, well, we're gonna modify this a little bit or split over the team because right now we need someone, a team. Usually, this has always happened. Usually have to split the team on the finance part, like the group that works on the part where you charge or where you handle money or credit cards or Stripe or whatever. You usually have to break it apart because there's sensitive information or personal information, etc. So you start moving around people. But yeah, the first one is very important, as you were properly saying. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost time. And for a startup company, for most of the companies, time is something extremely valuable. And reputation, I think that's also something very important.
I agree. Now, in your eyes, who should be involved in the decision-making process when hiring people?
I think the whole team. I think directors and managers need to be there. I usually recommend them to be the first. I like to split this over into who reviews what. I think managers are very good at reviewing motivators. If some people have to have the right motivators to work with you. If they're just looking for another paycheck, there's plenty of paychecks, especially for software engineers, anywhere. They have to be excited about this specific company or this specific project because of something. Could be a technology, could be the people involved, could be the markets they're servicing to, could be that there's a variety of applications, like there's mobile, iOS, Android, and web, and blah, blah. They have to be excited about something that is, if not unique, that it's very meaningful for the company. And also, managers have to look into the cultural fitness. Is this someone that's going to create, could be an excellent engineer, but it's going to be a back office engineer that no one wants to talk to him? There could be, I've brought some engineers to work on different companies with me with those skills, but knowing so, like I was being the manager is taking those risks with obviously some consideration on how it can impact or how it can help. and overseeing that it actually helps more than impact anything. Then the more senior people, leaders, architects, senior software engineers, they need to be there reviewing the level of skills of the person. Sometimes you want to bring along junior people, right? Like you want to review that they have proper foundations, like the strong algorithms. They're very strong in data access, in databases, or no, maybe someone that just have an open mind and is very open to learn, and they can actually learn real easily. And lastly, peers, someone that is at this, that's going to be the peer of this person, needs to be part of the interview, because this person can assess if this, they are the ones that know how complicated it is to be waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning because something broke. And this person needs to be in contact with those guys, the guys that actually wake up, and they should be frank enough and open enough and say, like, if you like coffee and sleeping and
This is not for you.
Exactly. Or if you like exactly partying or going around or doing some sexy code, well, maybe this is not the company. So they also need to say, like, this is where I see this person coming or bringing to the table. At the end of the day, as usual, there's someone has to make the decision. And usually it's the manager, because that's the person that's going to have the responsibility to make this person successful or dismiss this person. But everybody has to be involved in the process, and everybody has to be given the opportunity to give their insights.
Yeah. And this question, when I talk to folks, there's always a different answer. Mm-hmm. Everyone there's just a bunch of different aspects that you can bring into the equation. I don't think there's a perfect formula for it, but I do think that what you're mentioning is good, because you cover all the different areas. So that's pretty awesome. Now, when thinking about teams, and this is another one of those questions that I've always asked myself. So I'm always saying, okay, cool. Well, now I got started with the first layer of folks, but now how do you scale? You know, are there specific growth milestones, or are there specific just because you know the C-levels ask for it? You know, what are some specific growth milestones that you look at before hiring more folks or restructuring the team?
Yeah, well, one of the better indications that I found is the completion ratio. Once you start seeing that the team consistently is completing their stories in an early time, or even on the opposite, they're never hitting their mark, that means that the team is not well balanced. That means that's when you then have to go and look into the story complexity. How complex are the stories? So we need to break them down into smaller stories, or they're granular enough that it's something in the team instead of the stories. So the completion rate, you should always have, any manager should always have in front of their eyes the performance of the team through the last sprints. At least I would say as much sprints as you can have, at least a year, because then you can see and you can graph it. You can see the consistency. If the goals is here and you have always been here, you don't have the proper talent, or the complexity of the stories are extremely high. Complexity of the story is something very simple to modify, right? You just break them down into smaller tasks, give them more time, and if then you're still not able to modify the completion ratio, then it's the talent that you have. Then you have to restructure the talents. Another good indication is mentoring. You have to have a lot of constant and close communication with people. People need to share their knowledge. There's always going to be someone that knows something better than anybody else. The idea is that everybody has at least some sort of working knowledge of everything that everybody else is doing. If you know that there's mentoring happening and that there's people sharing their knowledge and there's people understanding that knowledge, and you're still not able to hit those complex stories, then you don't have enough talent or the proper talent to tackle them. If you're about to use Kafka, nobody has used it, well, then it's very simple, right? But if you've already been using certain framework and still you're not able to reduce the response time, then you need someone that has already done that. You need a specific talent that knows how that framework or this other implementation has been successful to hit those marks that you want to. And then that's when you start thinking about, well, maybe it's time to bring someone new, some more senior people, more specific talent, or send over someone to a boot camp or some sort of training so that they can actually absorb some new knowledge and bring it over to the team. But that will obviously require you to modify the structure of the team. But those will be the three more important aspects that I usually look for. There's some other aspects like burn down. You can see like because sometimes they are finishing their story, they are tackling a good ratio of complex stories with small stories, and they're sharing the knowledge, but they are extremely exhausted, right? So that's when you also realize like we are asking them to do too much. They are delivering, but this is unsustainable. Let's just restructure the team. That's on the better part, right? The worst part will be that they're not hitting the completion rate. They're not. The stories are as simple as they can get, and everybody has shared the knowledge that they have, and they're still not able to do it. Then there's more management involved in there. That it's, I would say, actually bringing another set of folks that can help out with more than it looks like.
I like that. I like the structured approach. Very engineering-like. And what would you say the timeline would be from growing a team from 0 to 10 to or 15 people? You know, just average. How long will it take to build that team?
On a perfect world, I would say a year, 9 months to 12 months. I would say on a perfect world, because that means that these people are not going to be distracted. They have enough time, I would say at least 90 days to really ramp up and understand the technology and being able to deliver. Most of the times and most of the metrics that I have found is that people are considered to be productive until the 6th month. I would say if you really push them, on the 3rd month, you can start getting some specific work out of more senior people. Junior people will take you a little bit longer. So after if you're considering between 3 and 6 months that they are fully operational, then having just another 3 months for maturity is a little bit small. That's why I would say maybe 12 months, because then you have another 6 months of really understanding and blossoming, like really applying what you bring to the table into what you now understand the product is. In those 6 months, you can modify a lot of things. At that time, after those 12 months, you can make decisions like this is an independent team, this is an independent group, or this person, we can bring this person and start mentoring or start teaching this person to become the next leader of this group, and he's going to take care of this group. But now you have some working knowledge of, in 6 to 9 months, you have seen this person take at least 2 or 3 good decisions, at least I would say 4 or 5 big problems. Most of the time, and this depends on the company, but at least one release within a year, you should always have at least one release. So you're certain that he knows at least once the whole end-to-end software development cycle, from planning to developing to going back to QA, testing, sandboxing, and delivering it. So it is a proper amount in my experience. That doesn't mean that there's companies that can do it faster, especially if the team still, if you keep it small, you're usually they're more flexible and they're faster. Yeah. If the team is on the bigger side, it will take a little bit more because there's a lot more going on. You are achieving more, but you are moving slower. So that means the time is going to take longer.
Got it. Yeah, so that's the factor, sort of like the size and time as well as effort. So it's the typical three things that you have to choose two, right? So and I mean, we talked about frameworks, we talked about management styles, but are there any specific processes that you use that you've seen work for managing engineering teams, specific engineering teams?
Yes, I have some of the ones are very simple. I think most of the people do. I have found that 30, 60, and 90-day review is extremely good. There is you do sit down with each individual and just tell them, like, on their 30-day review, 60-day review, 90-day review, if they are hitting the mark or not. And you go in detail on code simplicity, amount of bugs, documentations, things like that, and you don't have to grade them. You just have to say it's satisfying or it's not satisfying. So it's under the expectation or it's below the expectations or above expectations. And that way they're gonna be modifying, especially the first 30, 60 days. People are very excited because they're new to the company, so they really want to understand what the company is about. So by the 90-day mark, they should be everything should be above expectation. That means that this person is going to be good. Nothing is perfect. Obviously, something can happen down the road, but it's more prone to be better. The body system. The body system is something that I learned in a company I worked in North Carolina. They usually assign you a person of the team that is going to be shadowing you in everything that you do, so that any question that you have, you know who to turn to ask for. From simple things like where's the coffee in the bathroom, to where's the code, what's the name of the repository, do I create a local image or everything has to be done remote? Where is every company has the best practice Dropbox paper or Google Sheet or whatever. Where is that information, where I can get it? I want to ask for vacations. Do you think it's too early? Is the manager approachable, not approachable? The body will be the person that will hand you over all the information in a very simple way. I have seen it work very nicely, but I do have seen it go a little bit south if the body in that specific moment is distracted. One person was, his wife was pregnant, and it was a high-risk pregnancy, so he was very, very distracted. So he was the body of this new hire, and the hire was not completely neglected, but he didn't know who to turn to ask for questions. The third one is pair programming. I see that for a lot of people it's very uncomfortable, and it's not because you're sitting next to each other, because most of the time you don't sit next to each other. You just share your screen. But people feel that they're just looking into what you do. And some people do go to Stack Overflow, copy paste something similar, and then start modifying it. That's okay as long as the final product is good. So they feel a little bit monitor, like a big brother monitor. But at the same time, they also, especially if the peer that they are programming with, it's easygoing, they will know that that's something that everybody has done. There's nothing you have to feel ashamed of. Or if you copy paste a function and you just use it as a framework, it's okay. But most of the time, those peers will let you know what are the things that they usually do that actually work. Instead of going to Stack Overflow, like the one that you Google, some companies have a local Stack Overflow, where most of the questions are answered inside of the company, so you can go there. Or if you are very used to BI or Emacs, that it's very old, very old programming environment. Some other folks are going to tell you, no, this environment's much better because you can integrate A, B, and C and that. And some other folks will say, no, I love Notepad because you can write anywhere in the world. You didn't even have to have an internet connection. So those little things only a peer can give you. Then leaders code review. I found that at the beginning, for the new folks, the leader should be doing the code review. Afterwards, then you send it over to the team, and everybody in the team will review it. But leaders usually are the ones that are more jealous about doing things right. So they will be very, very meticulous on, you're not leaving enough space, comments are off, our standards are a camelback instead of underscore. Little things that functioning things will function, but you're not using the code or the structure of the company is actually using. Or maybe that's unique to that team, but that person is going to be on that team and he has to embrace the customs of the team. And finally, QA sit down. I have found that to be extremely good. QA depends on who does QA. If every single engineer does its own QA, I would recommend not to do that, but some companies do that. Then there's no one you have to sit down with. But if you have a proper QA team, QA would tell you what are the common things that they look for, because they usually know that the team struggles on doing them. Some teams are extremely good at presenting things very nicely, or following the happy path. But once you move away from the happy path, things are going to go south. And QA knows that. So they actually jump directly into, let's do stress testing, or let's do 1 million clicks on this one. They know what the team usually fails to pay attention to. So they're gonna see that it actually works. And if you see it, well, you're doing peer review with someone on the team. Then you're doing code review with someone on the team. So you now need an external advisor, so that fresh set of eyes let you see things that the other people are not going to see because they are part of that team, right? You need another perspective, and QA usually gives you another perspective.
I like that.
And finally, I think also they should be able to speak freely with someone that is not on the organization.
Okay.
If it's an engineer, they should be able to approach, or should have just a quick sit down, well, at least once a month with another manager from another division. They will give, obviously, a completely different approach of everything. It's not going to be engineer related, but it's going to be company related. And most of the time, some of those folks also have to work in some sort with engineers, and they're going to complain about things, and they're going to say, please don't do this that engineers usually do. And that's good feedback. That's a different feedback. And this person is going to grow. It's going to be a better engineer just because someone was able to tell that on an early stage rather than later.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, because I think that's, being able to, in the first stages of their engagement, to really it's sort of like hand holding, and it'll pay big dividends down the line. And I'm a firm believer that really investing time in those moments, those 2, maybe 4 weeks, I don't know, depending on the onboarding process that each company has, spending a good amount of time there and be very mindful about that. It helps them feel welcome. It helps them feel part of the organization. It helps them understand what's going on, because there sometimes, and again, I don't want to be, I'm going to go back to remote work as well, but being the new guy, and they usually don't ask. That's where I wanted to go. They don't ask. They're afraid to ask, and having these processes in place, and maybe the documentation, and maybe the essence of how they will be working really detailed will help that person know where to turn to during those moments of uncertainty. And it's interesting. And I guess for my next question and this is my second to last question, engaging with the engineering teams, what's what practices do you use?
Well, first, there needs to be a complete trust on what we're doing and how things are doing. So most of the time, I would say communication and transparency. We have to be, in order for an engineer to trust you, you have to be able to deliver things, to commit to things and deliver to things. There's no way you can commit to things if no one is bringing to your attention anything. So that's communication. The trust is built upon delivering, but communication is the foundation. People have to be able to approach you and to definitely bring something that they, most of the time it's not going to be a big deal because they're just testing waters. And you should, as a manager, you should be able to say, yes, we can do this, and I'm going to give it to you on a specific day. Second, it's also okay to tell them it's okay to say no. You know, like most of the times, especially for new people arriving, they don't want to say no because they don't want to be seen as someone that is running away from work. They want to be the ones, it's the yes guy, right? Like, can you do this? Yes. Can you do that? Yes. Or junior managers as well. Junior managers also tend to say yes to everything because they want to show that they can be, that they are worth of the manager position. So embedding the culture of it's okay to say no, just give me a proper reason. It's not because I don't want to. No. It has to be a reason. No, because this technology is obsolete. Because down the road, in 3 months, we're going to have to change it because the framework is changing. Things like that make sense. But that starts on communication. And we have to be able to find the talent that it's well communicated, or that you can see that they can communicate, because when you ask them about something that they're passionate about, that doesn't really mean that they are explaining code. For example, if someone is extremely passionate about grilling, cooking, and you ask them about like, how do you put together the best steak in whole Texas? They're gonna, and they really flourish, like they really change the way that they, even the position they're sitting in, and they start really engaging. That means that they're just shy. They have not been able to communicate with you because they see you as maybe an authority or someone that's going to judge them, or because they are the new guy and they don't want to show their weaknesses. Then you know that you can foster a relationship of communication, and whenever you tear down that wall, this person is going to bring you everything that it's on their mind, and obviously he's going to grow, you're going to grow, the team's going to be better. And also, undoubtedly, engaging with engineers requires also time. Meaning, I usually, this is something my wife doesn't like, but I'm usually picking up the phone at whatever time at night, in the morning, whatever. I like to be there for them. As I told you, my wife doesn't like it because there's been times that they're out for drinks, and they 2:00 in the morning, they think it's a good idea for them to call me to join them wherever they are, because it's not that late, you know. But some other times they do call me and say like, something happened, this guy fell, or our computer was stolen, or I was in a car accident, stuff like that. That it's something that I do want to help them. So being available for them whenever they need, at least, well, no, it has to be consistent. But at the beginning, when you're creating the confidence, you have to be there. Maybe down the road, you can let them know, well, right now it's not the best moment because I'm not even in Guadalajara, but I can help you, or ping this person or ping that other person. But yes, at the beginning, you have to be available to them because they need guidance. And that's why the body system usually works very well, because instead of going to the manager, they will go with a peer that doesn't feel that conflict of authority. But I'm calling because I got in an accident, but it's 3:00 in the morning. I shouldn't. It's a Monday. I shouldn't be out. Like, you know, Things like that
Yeah.
usually happen.
And it's always those things that, as well, they also bring you together a team because
Yes.
those things happen in outside of
Mm.
work. And then when we break that work boundary, it also becomes more of you feel more cohesive as teams, right?
Mm.
And, thinking about it brings me back to, I read the autobiography of Steve Jobs way back
Mm.
in the day when it
Mm.
when it came out. But I remember very, very vividly reading the part where they had the small office and they were pirates of some sorts. I can't remember exactly the same
Mm.
details of all the details of the story, but they were pirates, and then they would go and just sort of like together and attack
Mm.
to say the other team that was in another location, and that was sort of like their own mission, and those brought them together, and those made them be be more a team, a cohesive team,
Mhm.
besides just writing code and just sending that code away, releasing it. So I think it's part of the whole experience, and the fun of doing the work, and the fun of being in engineering, and the fun of building teams, and and I've enjoyed a lot this conversation. I think there's a lot of wisdom that that you've gathered over the years, and that you really bring to the table, and you understand exactly how to move the pieces around of building an engineering team that that are very, very insightful.
Mm.
And I mean, we're before ending our talk today, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for sharing this with us. It's been, like I said, very insightful, and I know that this is going to help a lot of folks that are out there thinking about building remote teams, or about or engineering teams, or just enhancing their engineering teams.
Mm.
And just to close up with one last question, to those companies, might that be small, medium, or large, and to those engineering managers that are thinking about building teams, about the building teams elsewhere, or building teams at a different location that where the HQ is, what would be your recommendation for them?
Well, the first one is do so. There is no, there is not a single thing that you can do that it's not going to work because you already done it. Um, the intuition that gives you the idea of what the product is and how it's working, especially if you're talking to the CEO or the CTO, they already had the idea of a great product. Or if you're working for a company that has a great product, great features, you've already done the more complicated part, that is putting that idea. Finding the talent to follow that idea is ubiquitous. It can happen anywhere. There is a lot of people and a lot of talent that can be accessed when you work remotely, when you allow them to work remotely. Even your own engineers that you already have now could be even more productive or happier, either go back to their hometowns, as long as they have a proper broadband. They can work from there, and they can be effective, and they can be close to family and friends and their traditions and stuff. And you're still going to keep the best part of them, that is the engineering part. Remote teams also reflect that you care about people. And most of the companies are people working together for a common goal. So people are the essence of the companies. If you care about people, people are going to care back to the company, and everybody's going to win. So also allowing remote work will reflect on the human side of the company, that is not only focused on, as we have all discussed, of having a great exit, or having a successful company, or unbelievable IPO, or being the unicorn that everybody wants to be one. It also creates an environment that people will cherish to be a part of, despite being successful or not. And that's usually what engineers are going to tell other engineers. They will tell, like, this technology is awesome, this product is amazing. It's, how could this guy think about this? But what they will remember more is how you make them feel while working with them. I felt empowered. I was free to do things. I was able to poke holes in here. I screw up so many times that they didn't fire me. They helped me outgrow. I had my better my better working experiences with these guys. That's, I think, the things that are gonna make a lot of engineers say like, oh, maybe it's time to look at these guys and see if we can work together.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that as a closing note, and it's been very awesome to speak with you and learn from you as well, and hopefully we can have a follow-up conversation later down the line, because I think there's a lot of things that we can talk about that given the time constraints we weren't able to, but it's been awesome. Thank you very much. And we've learned a lot about management. We've learned a lot about engineering management. We've learned about as well, how to grow teams, how to look at different specific things like you were mentioning, to know when it's time to grow, when's a good time. So for that, thank you very much, Javier. It was a pleasure having you. It was a pleasure having this conversation, and we look forward for the next one.
No problem. Jesus. Anytime.